90 AM, WBAL, and WBAL.com. I'm C4. And, you know, in the last gubernatorial election between Governor Martin O'Malley and former Governor Robert Ehrlich Jr., there was this discussion about how difficult it is to do business in Maryland, the regulatory atmosphere and environment. And then Governor Martin O'Malley, in January, unveiled something called Maryland Made Easy, which was supposed to help you navigate through some of this regulatory process. But a lot of people are questioning the ease with Maryland Made Easy. And not just at the state level, but the local level as well. When you go county to county, county to city, the differences in regulatory environment as opposed to an ease, who's talking about easy, to make things easier for businesses to start. We appreciate him joining us now because he's going to give us some examples of this. Howard Klein is the General Counsel and Treasurer of Klein Wright, ShopRite of Maryland. How you doing, Howard?
Good, C4. Good to speak with you, and I want to first thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you and your radio audience.
Well, I appreciate it. This is at the heart, though, how we have seen Maryland over the last year create less jobs than any place in America. We were 50th. Actually, we got tied for 49th now with Kansas, so we actually made a move up, Howard, to 49th. But we have continued to see, even though we're only at 7.3% unemployment with the latest numbers coming out, this environment that seems to be business unfriendly. Now, on your end, and talking to businesses, small business people that call me, they say, look, it is a maze trying to deal with Maryland's regulatory environment. So my first question to you, Maryland Made Easy, how is it?
Well, Maryland is in a difficult spot. First of all, the states around us aren't sitting still. States like Maine and New York and New Jersey are all in the process of revising or repealing regulations that impede development and growth. And second, we start at a severe competitive disadvantage in the private sector. You may or may not know that Maryland is the only state south of the Mason-Dixon line that isn't a right-to-work state. Mm-hmm. So if you look around at the competitive environment, Maryland is in pretty rough straits, and we're heavily dependent on federal employment and state employment to bolster what is right now a low unemployment rate somewhere north of 7%, but is projected to climb, unfortunately, somewhere to north of 11% if federal layoffs.
Oh, absolutely. You're talking about President Obama talking about over the 3-year period, the type of freezes in spending federally. There was a report out, Howard, that disproportionately Maryland will be affected 2 to 3 times more than any other state because of the some 250,000, federal folks that we have here.
So we need private sector job creation, and that's really my other role. One of my many other hats is I serve as a director for an organization called Maryland Business for Responsible Government, which is a nonpartisan organization charged with educating voters and legislators about how to improve the business climate in Maryland. And improving the private sector business climate is really what we're talking about. So in terms of Maryland getting its act together, assuming it wanted to get its act together and compete for private sector jobs, the question is what could we do and where could we start? And clearly, if we were going to start anywhere, it would have to be at the executive or administrative level, because that's the fastest way to affect change.
And a uniformity, Howard, of regulations across these crazy, invisible jurisdictional lines. One of the things in the letter co-written by your co-chairs, former Governor Marvin Mandel and former Ambassador Ellen Sarber, they talk about, like Baltimore County, for instance, they require, with a food entity, a food service entity, 1 certified food handler. That's in Baltimore County. But when you go to Howard County, there's no such requirement. So
Well, I would start even before you got to the different enforcement agencies around the state.
Okay.
I would even start at looking at the low-hanging fruit, agencies whose jurisdictions overlap with federal agencies, things like MOSHA and OSH, or DLLR in Maryland, or the Department of Labor.
Okay.
And do a side-by-side comparison of what the state agencies and regulations are compared with what their federal counterparts are. And where the state is more restrictive or doesn't deliver the commensurate benefits for their marginal costs, consider eliminating the state agency and let business follow a single set of rules under a federal standard. Basically, just try to clear out the muck and reduce all of our compliance costs. And it really starts, I think, at taking a look at what the charge of some of these state agencies are.
Well, now, when your own state departments of taxation, not yours, Howard, but the state's own, I'm reading in this piece here, on their website, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, when they have this thing called Maryland Checklist for New Businesses, they write this: regulations and other legal requirements change constantly. We strongly suggest you consult an attorney, accountant, or other business consultant. Boy, that makes me want to start up a business.
Well, sometimes it's a little scary because not even the comptroller's office necessarily understands how their department's regulations are written. For example, we got a call from a member of the comptroller's office just this week suggesting to us that we're over-collecting on sales tax. Now, the way this works in Maryland is that there are certain items in the sales and use tax article that we as retailers are required to collect sales tax on. No ifs, ands, or buts. They're clearly listed, and we know what those items are. Now, the regulation also states that we collect tax on the full retail value of the item, regardless of vendor coupons, if the vendor coupon is reimbursed from another third party.
Okay.
So, to try to explain this to you, a vendor coupon does not come off the value of the item for purposes of collecting the sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way we read it, and as we survey other members of our industry, that's the way they read it too. We actually shop several of our other competitors. I won't sit here and name names,
Sure.
but they're collecting exactly the way we collect it, and they're not reducing vendor sales or vendor coupons from the taxable total of the item. We get a call from an assessor this week challenging that position and saying that we are over-collecting sales tax. He doesn't understand his own regulation because it's so poorly drafted. And I went back and looked at the regulation, and I have to admit, it could have been drafted better.
And that's the point, is there's so few small business people. When I was at Annapolis, Howard, one of the things that we used to talk about was how few actual small business people were down there to help us to explain. I was on Ways and Means Committee. When you're drafting these policies, how do they actually affect the small business person?
I'll give you another clear example. We just did a renovation of a store in Bel Air, right in the heart of the county. It was a massive undertaking. We spent more than $6 million. Our equipment package for the facility was nearly half of that cost. We had to completely replace the entire equipment package for the store. The Maryland sales tax article states that companies get an exemption for what they call installation labor. In other words, if you bring in new equipment and you tie it into your existing equipment program package, you're supposed to get an exemption for the labor on the installation because Maryland assesses sales tax on labor. The comptroller reads that regulation so narrowly that the only actual reductions in labor tax we got were for the actual labor of unloading the cases from the trucks and rolling them into the building.
Oh, my goodness.
All the connection costs,
everything else.
All of the wiring costs, all the plumbing costs, all taxable.
Howard, Klein, stay with me because I want to talk with you about, we're getting ready to go into session, and now in September is the perfect time to have some ideas to go into this legislative session with, to do some of the things Howard's suggesting. Look, this December, Baltimore's best-loved musical is back for 5 weeks only at the Hippodrome Theater, and if you text the word LION, L-A-I-O-N, right now to 88509, you can win a pair of tickets to see the show. That's LION to 88509. LION, courtesy of WBAL and the Hippodrome Theater. It's time for traffic and weather. Together on the Fives, here's Chairman Nelson.
Thank you, C4. This report is brought to you by BGE Home. We'll head back to Owings Mills. Owings Mills Boulevard at Dolefield. Still have Baltimore County Police wrapping up their investigation from an earlier crash. No major delays reported. There was another fender bender, Bel Air Road at White Marsh Boulevard. Looks like that's out of the way. And some cleanup continues in the city and the investigation. Erdman Avenue, just east of 895 from an earlier accident. The WBAL InstaWeather Plus forecast. Variable cloudiness for the rest of the afternoon. We have the showers on again, off again until the early evening when things should kind of taper off. A cloudy night, 62 for the low. Tomorrow, partly cloudy with a chance of a shower or two, 77 degrees. Currently, we have clouds, some areas of light rain, 67 with traffic and weather together on the Fives all day long. I'm Tamara Nelson, WBAL Traffic.
Follow Sportsline with Brett Hollander on Twitter. Twitter.com/Brett Hollander.
Do you suffer from toenail fungus? Are you tired of hiding your ugly, yellow, and flaky nails? If you said yes, now is the time to do something about it. Hi, this is Dr. Mark Spear, a podiatrist with over 25 years experience right here in Maryland. If you want clear, healthy nails next spring, now is the time to schedule your appointment for the Pinpoint Foot Laser. Until recently, the only way to treat toenail fungus was with topicals that were messy and ineffective, or with pills that can have some serious side effects, including liver damage. I'm proud to be the first podiatrist in Maryland to offer the Pinpoint Foot Laser, the first FDA-cleared device for the treatment of toenail fungus. In just one treatment, we can give you the clear, healthy nails you've been looking for. If you're suffering from toenail fungus, call my office toll-free at 1-877-517-NAIL. That's 877-517-6245. Or visit us online at spearfoot.com. That's SPIER foot.com.
This heavyweight bout is about to begin. What's the champ wearing? Looks like an examination gown. And from the back, ooh, that's not pretty. Champ, what's with the get-up?
I've got to take care of my family, so I'm getting those important medical screenings.
The fight is over. Champ, you look pretty healthy out there tonight.
But I'm still getting those tests. For a list of tests you need, go to ahrq.gov. And remember, real men wear gowns.
Go to ahrq.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, AHRQ, and the Ad Council.
Get a jump on your commute. Live traffic updates at WBAL.com.
Hi, I'm Vince Gill for RAD, recording artists, actors, and athletes against drunk driving. Real life's not a song. In less than it takes to play my latest hit, someone will be killed or injured in an alcohol-related crash. So next time you're out with someone who's been drinking, don't let them take the wheel. Take the keys instead. Sad stories make great songs, but happy endings make better lives. That's why friends don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
Get news and WBAL programming updates through Twitter. Follow us at twitter.com/WBAL Radio.
Sassy!
Today's episode, Bobcat in the Cave.
Oh, nuts! There's a bobcat in this cave! Save us, Sassy! You will, but first you'd like to stress the importance of cat adoption? Over 5 million cats go into animal shelters every year and they need to be adopted? Help us, Sassy! Why bother? We'll just get into more trouble tomorrow?
Sassy is brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org. Remember, adopt.
Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about the Baltimore Grand Prix, and didn't make a lot of money. As a matter of fact, they owe some money they need to pay out. We're going to talk about this race coming up in the next hour in Baltimore City, and also later on in the show, when ideology combines with cronyism to place American lives and the nation's security at risk, it's quite another thing. We're going to talk about this, another growing scandal in reference to the Obama administration, so listen up. But right now, we're pleased to be joined by Howard Klein, and he's General Counsel and Treasurer of Klein Shopwright of Maryland, also with the Maryland Business for Responsive Government. And we're talking about the regulatory climate here in the state and in the local jurisdictions. And Howard, one of the things that I know coming up in this session is if you don't start hitting on these legislators now to make, and this is a good year because they still have 2 years before election, okay? So they can do some things without telling you, well, we can't do it because it's election year coming up. So what are just some things that you would, and others in your field would try to say, look, Annapolis, this is what you need to look at?
Well, I can't sit here and pretend to know everything about every industry.
Sure.
I honestly, I can't sit here and pretend to know everything about my industry. But I wouldn't just stop at the state level. I think local government has a role to play here, too.
Okay.
For example, we're building a 68,000-square-foot grocery store in Howard Park in Baltimore City in what's characterized as a food desert. Now, this community hasn't had a grocery store
for years. I know what you're talking about.
12 years, right? It's a great project. So we met with the city's Department of Transit to discuss our traffic study for the site. And the Department of Transit indicated to us that they wanted us to study 8 major signalized intersections for possible upgrades and improvements. Now, here we have a city, a wonderful city, unfortunately has lost 250,000 residents in the last 3 decades. We have a road network that's built for 800,000 residents. It's probably serving closer to 500,000
But
residents.
more importantly, how that whole
right?
block is vacant a bit. The businesses that were there are gone in that whole
Right.
block.
If we study these intersections, what would they propose we do? It's the city. They're building their sidewalks. They're built right up to the right of the way. We can't widen the roads. We can't add lanes. There aren't any rights of way left.
But that's an example. You make it concrete for anyone who knows that area. Concrete as there should only be open for business. Baltimore City, we love you to death for coming into that community.
We love the city, and we're excited to be there. But, help us out here. Don't slow us down with this sort of thing.
And that sends a chill. Before you get to the example, I just want to get so people can. That sends a complete chill, though, when you say this, and other businesses are thinking about maybe anchoring with you in an area, and they think it might have to go through this. It sends a chill through the business community.
Well, it does. I'll give you another example. We deal with health departments around the state. We're in Baltimore County. We're in Baltimore or Harford County. We're coming to Baltimore City. It's the same set of regulations across the state. But every jurisdiction in the state interprets the regulations differently. For example, the regulations state that you have to have a hand-washing sink within 8 feet of a food preparation area.
Okay.
So we put a hand-washing sink in our Bel Air store within 8 feet of the food prep area for our deli.
Mm-hmm.
We also leased out a portion of the same facility to a concessionaire. They're doing Asian food. So the Asian food workstation is also within 8 feet of the hand sink.
Okay.
The county said, no, that's not the Asian food hand sink. They need their own hand sink.
Are you kidding?
No.
They can't even wash it the same
I had to
sink.
bring water lines overhead and drop them down and plop a hand sink in the middle of the Asian food work area.
That's ridiculous.
It's just absolutely obscene.
And that is why, once again, these things are important. You say at the local level, too, going through the politics there. But the more that people hear this, though, Howard Klein, particularly when we're talking about job creation, when you talked about in Howard Park, that place is starving for some of those folks in that area to be employed at a grocery store or something like that. So,
and we're excited to do it. But, while we're on the topic of permits, all the permitting offices, both building and health around the state, are, as you might expect, severely understaffed. There are budget shortages everywhere. The city has budget shortages. The counties have budget shortages. When you file for a permit, your projects, unfortunately, can sit for weeks before someone in these understaffed offices find the time to look at your plans. Now, Baltimore City has come up with a solution for that, for stormwater management. They allow us, an independent business, to hire expediters, and they've actually got a series of expediters around the city that are contracted to the city to process stormwater management plans for the city's stormwater management office. Frankly, it's a brilliant idea.
Okay.
If they can do that for stormwater management, why can't you do that for building permits?
Exactly.
Why can't you do that for health departments?
And to me, Howard Klein, that is why, though, these conversations to me need to continue, because if we're really going to see job creation, we've got to let you open your doors so we can get you hiring folks. Howard Klein, I appreciate your time. Once again, General Counsel and Treasurer of Klein ShopRite of Maryland. Take care, my friend.
Thanks, and thanks for having me.